Savage Pathfinder, a really, really cool product, but sometimes if you're an experienced Savage Worlds player or game master especially, it's kind of easy to not, to kind of overlook or forget some of the little changes that are in there from the normal SWADE edition. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Play that funky tune, Carl.
Savage Worlds, one of the best games.
Welcome back, Savages. My name's Eric. This is Tabletop Tango. Please like, subscribe, smash those buttons. We really appreciate it. So yeah, today we're talking about kind of some of the little changes, kind of like the setting rules in Savage Pathfinder that are kind of easy not to realize or to forget about if you're an experienced Savage Worlds player. Now, because Savage Pathfinder is a unique product, that it's a, it's the rule book smashed with a setting book. It is kind of hard to always remember those little changes, because normally with a setting book, right, you just go to the setting rules and you can see all the setting rules there. It's not really the case for Savage Pathfinder. So these are kind of my top 5 things to remember if you're an experienced game master wanting to run Savage Pathfinder for the first time. So just starting out, let me switch my little screen here. Oh, okay, here we go. Make this smaller. We're really lazy here, so we do nothing in post. We do this all live. All right, here we go. So they do have this little like, what's new for Savage Worlds, and they do list some of the stuff here. So one of the things I'm going to talk about is listed in right in that intro, but it's kind of hard to remember because the other ones are listed like in bold, right? So right at the top we have research is folded into academics, so it's right there. They talk about class edges, that you get a free class edge. So there's some of the stuff here, but it's not really what I'm talking about for this. Yeah, let's get right into it. So number 1, as I said, right in the beginning there, where they in the second paragraph, they talk about the 4 wound cap rules. So number 1, yeah, wound cap is a rule in Savage Pathfinder. This is from the Savage Pathfinder book. So just to reiterate it, wound cap means that you can only take up to 4 wounds from any amount of damage roll, like regardless of raises. So even if you get, a 45 damage or 56 damage, right? Your character is only going to be having to deal with 4 wounds at a time. And they talk about large creatures. So this is just part of Savage Pathfinder. Me and Carl normally play with this anyways, but it's something that's easy to kind of just overlook when you're starting Savage Pathfinder. So that's my number 1 is wound cap is a rule. Yeah. Okay. Starting out next is we have conviction. Conviction is another setting rule that's in the normal SWADE. It is a normal rule in Savage Pathfinder. So conviction, again, to just go over what it is, it's another meta currency like Bennies. It's an explodable D6, a D6 that aces, that when you want to use it, if you have a conviction point, you say you want to use it, and for that round, any trait roll and damage roll that you make gets another D6 that can ace. So it's very, very powerful. Now, you last for the whole round, all your rolls for that round. It only lasts 1 round, but you can spend a Benny for like subsequent rounds to keep it going for that round. So you can kind of spend a Benny to kind of get to prolong that conviction. They also last in between sessions. So if you have conviction, it lasts until you use it. And they're normally rewarded for, like, they talk about triumphs and tragedies. So kind of like really, really big moments, you're awarded a conviction. It's a really good way to award players kind of more permanently than a Benny, right? And not like an advance or something. So yeah, it's a normal rule for Savage Pathfinder. Well, it's a setting rule for SWADE. Now, it also does a couple of other things for Savage Pathfinder. One of the main reasons it can be used besides the normal use is that for abilities, like things from edges, or sometimes maybe, mostly, I think it's mostly edges probably. Maybe there's some ancestral ones, but edges, if something says it's, you can use it once per day or once per encounter, you can spend a conviction to replenish that use. So if you've spent your once per day ability, you can spend that conviction and you can get it back in that same day, if that makes sense. And you can do that for as many conviction points as you have. So yeah, that's like a really powerful version of it, because there's some very, very strong edges that are once per day, once per encounter, like arcane archer stuff or some monk. There's a ton of stuff in there. So yeah. It can also be used by summoners to rearrange Eidolon evolution points. So Eidolons are big creatures that you assign points to give them like capabilities, and you can summoners can use their conviction to rearrange them, which is a very flexible ability. Finally, Characters can also gain conviction through downtime using the center action, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. So players in Savage Pathfinder can actually gain conviction when they have downtime if they want, which is a really good use of your downtime. I highly recommend it if you don't have something else to do. Also, the wish power enables you to gain 3 conviction, I believe. I didn't put it here, no. You can gain 3 conviction using wish. I think it's only one time, but yeah. So the wish power also. So yeah, that's my number 2, is conviction is a thing, and there's a couple of other ways to use them or get them. Okay, number 3. Game Master Bennies. So the Game Master's extra wild cards get 3 Bennies instead of 2. Now, they do mention that here. So if you see, they say, where is it? Blah, blah, blah. Enemy wildcards now get their full complement of Bennies. That's not always clear, and you might not just track it. It's another one that I've seen. You know, like I said, Carl, we did a huge campaign with Savage Pathfinder. I've done some one-shots with people. I'm running my own game, so I've seen this be forgotten about by new Savage Pathfinder Game Masters. But yeah, so NPC wildcards get 3 Bennies instead of the normal 2, giving them a little bit more power, which is needed because, well, yeah, we'll talk about that at the end. Okay. And number 4, here's another one that's very hidden. Shields are different. So here's the normal shield rules. Let me see if that's in frame. Yeah. Here's the normal shield rules. So you use shields, and it covers, you know, the cover penalties is from the attacks from the front and from the side. There's a little bit more to it with shields and Savage Pathfinder. So in this one, you know, they talk about facing again, right? If you're attacked by multiple creatures on the same action card, so, you know, if you have whatever soldier, generic soldier, and you have 10 of them, right, that's on the same action card. And it only protects them from half of those attackers rounded up. So shields have a little bit more of a limitation here, which is definitely needed because shields are extremely powerful in Savage Worlds. So yeah, this is just an extra thing that you might not realize as a Savage Worlds player that is actually different in Savage Pathfinder. So just know that when there's a bunch of extras on the same action card, the shields only apply to half of them rounded up. Defenders call which one, so that's pretty nice. And then it also says you ignore that if the shield bearer has a superior position, if they're flanked by allies or kind of against the wall. So, you know, narratively it makes sense that the numbers wouldn't affect them, like being able to get around them, because we don't really have flanking, right? We have gang up bonus, but we don't really have like positional flanking in Savage Worlds. So yeah, definitely a cool change. I would use this in normal Savage Worlds as well. Okay. Finally, number 5. This is not really a setting rule, but PCs are just more powerful than most other settings in Savage Worlds, normal Savage World settings and SWADE, just normal SWADE. You know, they have their free class edge they get, and class edges and prestige edges. Class and prestige edges are very powerful, and there's some very, very strong combinations that make some very powerful characters. Some of the other edges in there are strong. You know, all the ancestries in Savage Pathfinders are 4-point ancestries. They talk about that in the ancestry section, so that might be something that a Game Master also kind of overlooks or doesn't read about. But what that means is that all of them are balanced around a positive +4 to their abilities instead of a +2, which is normal. And, you know, powers are more powerful. So just generally balanced against what you find in the bestiary. And this is just overall. And Savage Worlds, right? We're not talking about perfect balance or anything. But I've just found that Game Masters where, you know, if you're an experienced Savage Worlds Game Master and you kind of have this sense of, okay, how do I make, you know, an encounter that, again, is quote unquote balanced or, you know, where I want it to be, players are definitely going to skew to being stronger than you're used to. And especially it's kind of multiplied even more so than normal Savage Worlds. You know, it's seasoned veteran and heroic and legendary. Once you start getting up in their ranks, you really start to see these kind of multi-classing possibilities come into fruition and some of the prestige edges, things like that. You know, if your players don't really care about optimization, if they're just doing stuff purely out of flavor and maybe they don't, you know, have a well-balanced party, that might be the case. You probably know your players better. But even if that's the case, just if they're following their class edges, right? If they're going down the tree of class edges, then they're going to be stronger and they've chosen an ancestry that's stronger. So, I mean, if you've played, you know, superhero games can be really wild depending on how, you know, the kind of enemies that you're using. Same thing with something like Rifts. So it's kind of similar to those, although Rifts has some powerful enemies. I've just found that the enemies in Savage Pathfinder, I guess Carl could definitely attest to this. We were kind of wiping the floor a lot of the time. You're just stronger. And healing is just you can make one of the strongest healing kind of builds. There's a bunch of very strong healing builds in Savage Pathfinder. So it's just something for Game Masters to be aware of when they're going to Savage Pathfinder. So yeah, those are my top 5 things. I hope people got something out of it. And if you have other ones that you think I missed, that weren't in that kind of beginning thing here, then yeah, shout it out in the comments. I mean, the only other kind of bonus things I can talk about are, as they said, academics. Research is folded into academics, but you can still use, occult or your spellcasting skill when it makes sense, doing a quote-unquote normal research role. Also, alchemy was introduced in the APG, so anything to do with alchemy is covered in that. And they have a little section there on animal handling, how they use persuasion or intimidation. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in Savage Pathfinder that's different, but these are the stuff that I just feel like is missed. So happy gaming.
Savage Worlds, one of the best games